Hi guys. Okay, so we're now into week 9 of our remote lessons. Only week 3 though of the current topic, which is obviously persuasive speeches. So what I want us to do this week is to use our sessions to plan and research your own speech. Okay, so I've done the teaching in the last 2 weeks really about the concepts and principles of how persuasion works, rhetorical figures, playing around with language, practicing. So I want to start trying to pull all that together into actually the process of planning your own speech with your own topic, researching it to find out information and facts, and then writing it next week. So we won't get onto the writing this week, but we'll do all the planning and researching. Okay. Now, before we start that, as usual, I'd like to do a quick review to make sure you remember a few things from the last couple of weeks. So please, can you pause this video and answer these questions in your book? As always, please answer them from memory. If you can't answer them from memory, go back and check your notes, but it's most effective to do it from memory first. So please pause the video now, do that, and then restart the video once you've answered the questions. Okay, a quick bit of self-assessment then. Please mark your own answers. So, number 1, what do the words ethos, logos and pathos mean? They are the Aristotelian triad. Ethos is about you creating an impression of yourself as a speaker or presenter or writer, as credible, trustworthy, someone who can be relied upon. Logos is about logic, developing a logical and detailed argument, actually knowing stuff. So that does include use of facts, but not just facts, statements of information that are thoughtful, interesting, and based on knowledge of the topic. And pathos is the emotions bit, trying to take all of this information and add in moments that are going to really hit your audience in the heart. Number 2, antithesis is opposites. So often antithesis is used a lot in persuasive speeches. Antithesis to the extent of this is the reality, this is what could be if we change. Antithesis also as in the kind of counter argument idea of this is what some people believe, but this could be the alternative. So antithesis is just all about the creation of opposites. What is meant by the illusion Sisyphean task? It means a task which seems endless or impossible. So we call things a Sisyphean task if they seem like we're never going to get there. Herculean effort is really, really tough challenges which you have to be heroic and brave to achieve them. Herculean effort and Sisyphean task are quite similar in a sense because they both refer to really difficult challenges which seem impossible. The reason Herculean effort is more positive is because Hercules completed his challenges and demonstrated heroism in order to do so, whereas Sisyphus never achieved his. The word specious is a great word. It means that an argument is superficially plausible but actually false. So if somebody said something and we said that is specious, we would mean that it seems like it could be true but actually it's not. And the counter-argument is the fundamental structure of persuasion, showing that you understand what the opposite opinion is, but also being able to respectfully disprove that argument. Okay, I just want to link again to prior learning and logos and talk to you a little bit about using quotation. We talked a bit when we did logos before in a previous lesson about the use of facts, statements of information and building syllogisms. But another really effective way to create logos is through quotation. And basically, if you are delivering a speech on a topic, if you can quote someone who's really influential and important in their field, it adds credibility to your argument. It kind of relates to ethos, I guess, that you can seem more impressive in your line of argument by quoting somebody else. So you've probably seen this a lot. Politicians love to quote Winston Churchill, famous wartime leader. So enacting that spirit, taking lines from him in different contexts. Also, particularly sort of right-wing politicians will often quote Margaret Thatcher as a successful and powerful figure of the past. So what I'd like you to do, please, on this is to think, if you were delivering a speech on the following 3 topics, who could you quote that might add credibility to your build-up of argument? So number one, if you were delivering an anti-racism speech, can you think of a credible figure from either the current day or history who you could quote who would add strength to your argument? Same again, but a human rights speech, and then same again, but if you were delivering a speech persuading people to do more to protect the environment. And I've given you 6 potential people. You can come up with your own, this isn't an exhaustive list, but 6 potential people who could be useful. So can you please just write down these topics and identify a person who you think you could refer to or quote in order to create logos. Pause the video now, please, and do that, and then restart it when you're done. Okay, so a quick self-assessment based on the options I gave you. You may have your own. So you could obviously anti-racism, Nelson Mandela, MLK. There are big ones. Martin Luther King. Nelson Mandela, former President of South Africa, an incredibly inspiring man in many ways, and Martin Luther King, the famous civil rights activist. If you don't know who those people are, Google them. Human rights speech. Well, I've put here Pankhurst. Now, obviously, Pankhurst actually is feminism. Angelina Jolie, Amal Clooney also figures heavily involved in feminism as more than just human rights. So we maybe kind of use those for the second one. And then the third one, obviously, good old Attenborough, is great to use if you were talking about the environment. Okay, so as I said to you at the beginning of this session, the big picture of where we're going now, you have to deliver a persuasive speech as part of your GCSE course. It does not count towards your grade, but it is compulsory. You get awarded a pass, a merit or a distinction, and it is a compulsory part of your GCSE English language course. So I want you all to have planned, written and practiced delivering a persuasive speech by the end of this school year, so that we can tick that off, we can assess it later, tick that off as being something that you have achieved during this lockdown period. This week will be all about planning. Next week will be all about writing. So it is essential that you do all of the work this week and keep it safe because you'll need it next week. You are going to generate your own topic for your own persuasive speech, something you care about. You're going to research it and you're going to prepare it. So you should find that really enjoyable activity, hopefully. Just as a note, you might also be asked to write a persuasive speech in your English language exam. So although this is mostly all about your spoken language, about your coursework, you might need these skills later for your exam. So it's really valuable in a twofold sense. You have already learned about the 3 appeals of rhetoric: ethos, logos and pathos. You have also learned about the how to use rhetorical figures to add persuasive power to your speech. If you don't know that, if you haven't done these sessions on ethos, logos and pathos, and you haven't done the sessions on rhetorical figures, you need to do them, because you can't do a good persuasive speech if you don't fundamentally understand these things. Assuming that you've done all of this, we're moving on to the 5 parts of rhetoric. So this week, you're going to be learning about invention, arrangement and style. Memory and delivery we'll leave till later because you can't do these different parts until you've got the 3 done. Invention and arrangement are largely about planning. Style is about actually writing it. Obviously, memory is all about memorising what you have written as part of stage 3, and then delivery is about giving it a bit of oomph when you get up on and say it. But as I say, we're going to plan it this week. So we're going to do invention and arrangement. We're going to do a little bit of looking at style, but mostly style we'll do next week because we'll be actually writing it. Okay, so let's get on with it. So the first part of rhetoric and being a successful speaker, producing a successful persuasive speech, is all about the invention stage. Now, obviously, I don't mean by that making things up. What I mean is coming up with ideas. We would generally call this the planning stage. Basically, what we mean by the invention stage is thinking in advance about what arguments could be made both for or against an idea, for and against an idea. So you take an idea and you think, okay, what are my reasons why my idea is right? But you also think, what are the reasons someone would disagree with me? You will come up with more ideas and arguments than it's possible to use. So part of the invention stage isn't just generating ideas, but it's actually also about making choices, deciding, right, I've got 8 ideas here. These are the really strong ones, these are weaker, and I'm going to go with these strong ones and leave out these weak ones. The invention stage is also about thinking carefully about your audience. So once you've got a list of ideas and you start trying to decide which ones to go with, you need to think carefully about what would most impress the people you are talking to. And just to exemplify that point, I've just taken a kind of hypothetical situation. A local music venue intend to increase their ticket prices, and they deliver a persuasive speech in order to argue that this is a good idea and to persuade their customers that they think it's a good idea. So if they were going to be persuading customers that it's a good idea to raise ticket prices, the types of things they're likely to say are that they can invest in better facilities, they can book more famous bands, they can upgrade the sound system. They're the kinds of arguments that a customer would think are valuable and worthwhile. However, they might use these arguments if they were trying to persuade their shareholders, the people who invest in their venue. But they would also talk about things like improving their profits, improving the reputation of the venue. Because a customer is going to have very different priorities than a shareholder. So when we think about our arguments, we're not just thinking about ourselves and what we want to argue, we're thinking, what would best impress our audience? Now, the absolute simplest way to start the invention stage is a for and against table. Simply draw out a table, not yet, simply draw out a table, and in column 1, list everything that comes to your head that's for your argument. And in the second column, anything you can think of that people might disagree with you. So at this stage, we're not researching, we're not coming up with really good ideas necessarily, we're just getting our initial thoughts on paper. Now, in order to practice this process of creating a for and against table, what we need to do first is to generate a thesis. All I mean by that is a big idea you intend to prove. So I've come up with an example here. So for my speech I'm going to write with you, I am going to argue the following. We have a moral duty to do everything we can to stand against child labour across the world. Childhood is a precious time, and it is not good enough to passively ignore the fact that across the world children work in dangerous and difficult jobs. Now, obviously child labour isn't really an issue in the UK as such, but in some parts of the world it really is. Millions of children do not go to school, they work in incredibly difficult jobs. And it's something I'm hugely opposed to. So I'm going to write my persuasive speech aiming to persuade other people that this is important and that we all need to do more to try and stop it. What I'd like you to do is to create your own thesis, to generate your own big idea, your big concept of your speech that you intend to persuade other human beings to agree with. And I'd like you to use this same phrasing. We all have a moral duty too. Obviously, I've said do everything we can to stand against child labour across the world. You can come up with a different topic. And I've given you some ideas here. So your topic for your speech could be, we all have a moral duty to stand against racism. Very topical at the moment. We all have a moral duty to protect our environment, to be kind, to protect the rights of members of the LGBTQ community, to eliminate homelessness in the UK. You may have your own idea, but all I want you to do at this stage is to write the words we all have a moral duty to and finish that sentence with a statement of something you think is important, something you care about in the world, because you are going to write a speech that persuades other people to agree with you. Please do that and then click on the next video that is the next one for this lesson. Thanks, guys.